How you doing, everybody? Vasi Party here with the Make the Money and Run podcast for March 25th, 2021. What a day it will be today for some teams. If your team's in contention in the NBA, hopefully you made some moves to help you. If not, maybe you got some assets or some draft picks, because as of 12 o'clock Pacific time, it is NBA trade deadline. And NBA trade deadline ended at noontime today. We've got the Make the Money and Run podcast. We're going to cover it all right now. As you see, Charlie's having a little computer trouble. Casey's taking the day off today. He's got some other work that he's got going, so he's on assignment as well. So I'm here solo right now going into this as we get set up. We know we got Sweet 16 March Madness coming up. That won't be till Saturday. The NBA will go tonight with a different look on some of these teams. Here are some of the point spread lines for tonight. Miami, a 2-point favorite over Portland at home. The Knicks playing Washington again after a big blowout the other night, minus 224. That total went way over on Tuesday. The Clippers made a trade today, 6.5 at San Antonio. 222.5 is the total. Sacramento hosting the Golden State Warriors, who were in the market looking for another shooting guard. They did not get any. Sacramento 2.5, 226. They made a couple of trades today as well. And then the Philadelphia 76ers, the best team in the East by one game, actually by 2 games now, over the Brooklyn Nets at 215.5 is the total. 5.5 against the Lakers, minus LeBron James and Anthony Davis. As we get to the trade deadline today, as we said, there were a lot of trades that were going on today, so we'll get to some of them right now. The last couple of days, we've had Milwaukee stays hot. They beat Boston last night. Denver blown out by Toronto after they blew out Orlando 2 nights ago. They get Aaron Gordon from the Orlando Magic. Toronto holds on to Kyle Lowry. He was a big name on the trade market, but they do trade their off-guard Norman Powell to the Portland Trailblazers. The Suns lose to Orlando after a big win over Miami 2 nights ago, and Orlando has depleted their team. Their 3 best players, Batman, Robin, and Batgirl, all sorry, I didn't mean to call Evan Fournier Batgirl. But anyway, Nikola Vucevic, Aaron Gordon, and Evan Fournier traded to different teams. Vucevic goes to the Bulls. Aaron Gordon goes to Denver, as we said. And Evan Fournier traded to the Boston Celtics. The Bulls lose to Cleveland. They get Vucevic as well, too. Other trades that took place on Wednesday, Rodney Hood and Gary Trent Jr. go to Toronto for Norman Powell, as we said. Evan Fournier to Boston, Gordon and McGee to Denver. JaVale McGee from Cleveland was traded to Denver. They're going to help out with Nikola Jokic as the MVP candidate center. McGee, the backup center now at Denver. He started his career there. Talked about Vucevic. Sacramento gets DeLon Wright. He was with Detroit. He gets traded to Sacramento. And JJ Redick, it came right at the deadline. JJ Redick traded to Dallas from New Orleans. Now, all the trades had to be made by 12 o'clock, but as far as reporting it to the league office, it may or may not come through. So we'll keep you updated if there's any other trades coming in. But we'll let you know. Charlie's having a tough time here getting on here. I don't know what's going on with his computer, but we'll figure it out. And if he gets on, he gets on. If he doesn't get on, he doesn't get on. So let's go through some of the trades, some of the other trades that took place as well, too. So let's see. Rajon Rondo, let's find that here. Rajon Rondo from the Atlanta Hawks to the Los Angeles Clippers. Lou Williams gets traded from the Clippers to the Atlanta Hawks. Matt Thomas, the sharpshooter from the Toronto Raptors. Toronto unloading a lot of their pieces today. He goes to the Utah Jazz, a big acquisition by the Jazz. They were in the market for Kyle Lowry. Toronto has let the new Pacific Time, 3 Eastern Pacific Time trade deadline go by, and he's going to stay with Toronto. He's a free agent at the end of the year. And those of you that are in tune with this or capologists know that the Larry Bird exception applies to this, where if you sign your own team member, you don't fall under salary cap restrictions for the first year. And then finally, I don't even know why they traded for him, but Victor Oladipo goes to Miami. He got traded to Houston right before the season started. Karis LeVert went to Houston in a trade from New Jersey when they acquired James Harden. So Karis LeVert went to Houston. I don't know why Houston didn't keep Karis LeVert. They just came off a 20-game losing streak, and they've got pieces there. Karis LeVert, Christian Wood would have made a nice starting spot for the Houston Rockets, but he's in Indianapolis. He's finally getting back on the floor. And Angelica from Sacramento also gets traded. Daniel Tice gets traded to Chicago for Mo Wagner. who was traded earlier from Washington. So Washington had Wagner, traded him to Chicago, and now Chicago has traded for Daniel Tice for Mo Wagner to go to Boston. So it's going to be an interesting scenario as we go. Some other trades to talk about, as we said: Norman Powell, Evan Fournier, JaVale McGee. Lots of things going on. The Rondo trade is very interesting to me. The Atlanta Hawks, they're in the mix for the 6th and 7th spot, but they wanted to get Lou Williams. They needed another shooting guard. Rajon Rondo, the Clippers don't really have a point guard. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George handle the ball. Patrick Beverley is the de facto point guard, but I'm not sure if he's a starting point guard or he's better off the bench, as we said. So you just got to think that the Clippers are going after a veteran leadership presence in Rajon Rondo, something to go with as well. So we just have to figure out what Tyronn Lue and the Clippers are thinking. But they're in contention. They're in 4th place as we look at the standings today. The trade deadline, as we said, coming across with the 3 o'clock Eastern time coming in. All right, we got Charlie O coming back in now. We'll add him in. We'll get him going. Charlie, how are you? Charlie O here with us. Casey on assignment. The Make the Money and Run podcast. We're powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. Lots of talked about, Charlie. I just started getting into the trade deadline. Here are the lines that we have for today. But what a day. If you're the Orlando Magic, you traded a quarter of your team, basically. Let's get to that here a little bit. But as we said, the Make the Money and Run podcast will be here tomorrow. We'll talk NBA trade deadline and more NCAA talk as the Sweet 16 goes in. But as I was putting it up here, the Milwaukee Bucks, they beat Boston yesterday. Denver gets blown out by Toronto. Norman Powell gets traded. The Phoenix Suns lose to Orlando, and then they trade 3 guys. And the Bulls lose to Cleveland last night, and they get that center. So where do you want to start? We got these trades going on right now all over the place, Charlie.
Well, Vasu, it was really interesting to me that I'm still trying to figure out, and I listened to Woj. I've listened to some other people talking about it, and I've been trying to figure out why all of a sudden the Orlando Magic are saying we're going to blow everything up and rebuild, because I thought that's what they were doing. Really, isn't that your impression about what they've been doing for the last 3 years?
Yeah, but they just didn't have any leadership problems, and they were going through all sorts of issues right now. We heard Aaron Gordon request a trade the other night. They were frustrated. They were on a losing streak. Nobody's as bad as the Rockets this year, who might be the worst team after they broke their 20-game losing streak the other night. But here's my question on that. Victor Oladipo also got traded in that standpoint too. If you trade for Victor Oladipo from Indiana to Houston, and then they trade Karis LeVert to Indiana, why not keep LeVert and Christian Wood to start building pieces for Houston? Why would you even get rid of LeVert if you're going to end up trading Oladipo anyway, which they did to Miami? Miami's a little bit more structured than what Houston is, so I'm not sure how this is going to fit for Miami from the standpoint of Oladipo, but that's a big trade. And then the other one is, I was not surprised that Kyle Lowry didn't get traded. Kyle Lowry was on the trading block, but he goes past the 12 o'clock Pacific time deadline. It's just a matter of he's a free agent at the end of the year, and he may want to stay in Toronto, and Toronto may want to keep him. Depends on how they end up, because they're still in the playoff hunt, believe it or not, in the East. As far as I think they're 11th or 12th, so they're right there in terms of the playoff format. But the Larry Bird exception comes into this, and I was just explaining for those that don't understand. The Larry Bird exception is basically based on the fact that we have you keep your salary cap restrictions limited from the standpoint of you don't have to worry about the cap in year one. So if he signs with Toronto again, then all salary cap stuff is not applicable in that situation. So that's where we're at with that.
Well, I've been kind of wondering too, Vasu. Because Lowry was on a expiring contract, if they're going to be talking trade, at that point they have a right to talk to the agent and the player. So, like for instance, the Lakers. If the Lakers were going to be interested in getting Lowry, they're not going to want to give up valuable assets and then not be able to have him next season. And I'm wondering that in talking with him, if what he wanted to stay beyond this season was more than what they were willing to stomach and give up the assets that they were going to have to give up for him and stay. I mean, the guy's, I mean, the fact of the matter is he's 35 years old. And if he wants a 4 or 5 year max deal to stay around, that's not worthwhile. So I'm just wondering whether or not when teams were potentially looking at him and they made that inquiry and said, now look, if we bring you, what does it take for us if we use our bird rights to keep you? I'm wondering if his price was too high to keep him to stay around.
It's going to be interesting to see because I know Philadelphia, Miami, and I think there was one other team that was interested. I heard Danny Green's name be mentioned with the Warriors also, but then they don't trade Lowry. They trade Norman Powell to the Portland Trailblazers for Rodney Hood and Gary Trent Jr. Norman Powell's a good player. I didn't realize, I've seen quite a few Toronto games, but Norman Powell's averaging nearly 20 points a game, and they've got Van Vliet there as well too, and Lowry. So they've got a good 3-guard setup there. Norman Powell, I guess, will play small forward in that scenario, but 19 points, or he comes off the bench too in some situations. 19 points a game. Portland's getting another shooter to go with Lillard and McCollum. They need some big guys, and they've got maybe Jurkic comes back. I'm not sure who they have from a big guy standpoint because it's Lillard, McCollum, but if they get another shooter there, they're over 500. They're in the 6th spot in the Western Conference right now. So if he helps them from the standpoint of scoring, I guess he's a pretty good defender. I remember him being a pretty good defender, and that team needs a lot of defense. So Norman Powell gets traded, and then, like I said, Orlando traded all 3 of its guys: Aaron Gordon, Vucevic, Evan Fournier. By the way, here's a random stat for you. It's not really random because they do keep track of everything nowadays. Nikola Vucevic is the #1 field goal percentage leader on 2-point shots on catch and shoots, believe it or not, above all the other sharp shooters in the NBA. So you're talking about a 15 to 17-foot jump shooter that can stretch a defense out. And he's also a pretty good 3-point shooter. Chicago doesn't have any big men. They're right there in the East as far as 6th or 7th from the standpoint of the playoffs. And here's an all-star center coming to your team in Chicago. They're going to love him in Chicago because of the fact that he can shoot the ball. I don't even know who their center was before they got there, but they had Zach LaVine, and they've got other guys that can shoot from the guard spot. They traded Wendell Carter back to Orlando, and I think he just struggled there as the big man for Chicago. But you get a guy like Vucevic in Chicago, all of a sudden the stock rises for me in Chicago as far as the Bulls go, Charlie.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were a lot of teams who had gone after Vucevic for over the last 2 seasons. I mean, for instance, I know Sacramento, not this season, but last season, before the season started, made a big run at him. They were offering a multiple player, multiple draft pick deal to try to get him. And Orlando at that point in time was not interested. Their scenario at that point in time was not to blow the team up, so they were not interested in that kind of deal. So it didn't come together. But I know that there have been a number of teams, even last year at the trade deadline, that were making runs at him. So I mean, one of the teams that I was a little surprised about, frankly, Vasu, was your Bulls. I mean, I figured they would make a little noise because they are playing pretty good basketball, and I thought they would want to make sure that they made the playoffs. So I thought they would pull off some. But man, they got serious, and I think this deal in getting Vucevic, wow, that was a serious commitment to their team and to their fans, saying, we're not messing around here. We're serious. We are wanting to make the playoffs, and we are wanting to go deep in the playoffs.
Vasu Vadaparty, Charlie O. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast for March 25th, 2021. The trade deadline took place at 12 o'clock Pacific time. It ended at 12 o'clock Pacific time. Casey on assignment today. Let's talk about the Sacramento Kings a little bit in that area. They traded Bjelica to Miami. So Miami made 2 trades today. They get 2 shooters, guard, Oladipo, and Bjelica. The Heat on a 4-game losing streak.
Bjelica,
yeah. You're right.
That's all right. I mean, it doesn't look like that, so it's okay.
Yeah. Nemanja Bjelica. Yeah. No, I knew that. I don't know why. We're just doing a show here. By the way, speaking of the Sacramento Kings, I want to give a shout out to Krista Blanc, by the way. I don't know. You live in the area. You probably heard with the empowerment of the of the women's movement of the month. Krista Blanc, a longtime friend of mine, longtime friend of from the San Jose Lasers women's basketball league days in the 90s, and I've known her for a long time. She did Sacramento Monarchs games. Sacramento Kings on NBC Sports California. If you have League Pass, or I don't know if they're going to show it on NBA TV or not, they are going to have an all-female play-by-play and studio show done on Saturday night against the Cleveland Cavaliers. So congrats to Krista. I think Katie Christensen, Hunter is going to be the analyst, and then they've got they've got Laura Britt from NBC Sports Bay Area going to be the studio host, and 2 other women that are going to be there whose names I don't know. She sent them to me yesterday, but I'm hoping to have Krista on conversation with tomorrow before she gets on there. So congratulations to Krista, and also here in the Bay Area to Kate Scott, Gareth Burke, who's the sideline reporter for the Warriors, and Mary Murphy used to be the coach at Cal. Kate Scott and Mary Murphy with the Pac-12 Network. They're going to do the Warriors game on the radio on 95.7 locally in San Francisco. So if you get that on the app anywhere and you want to tune in and hear a different perspective, those are fabulous basketball women to listen to. Trust me on that, Chris.
Yeah, my buddy my buddy Morgan Reagan, who we call Mo, who also does a segment for us every week on our D-Lo and KC show on ESPN 1320 here in SAC, is going to be the social media coordinator on that event that night. And she's really excited. And she also, Morgan, by the way, Mo does color for the G League games in Stockton. They're not playing this year in Stockton, but last year she did color for the games in Stockton, and will do so again once the league's up and running normally next season.
What's the guy's name that does the play-by-play for the Stockton? He's on my Facebook page, and I forgot his name because we go back and forth on Twitter.
You know, his name is Deuce, and it just went right out of my head.
Yeah, Deuce Mason. It's Deuce Mason.
Deuce is going to kill me now. Yeah, Deuce Mason, a good guy, and a good play-by-play guy, and a great sports talk show host. Really good.
So congratulations to Krista Blanc, our friend Krista Blanc, going to fly into Sacramento from what the messages I got from her yesterday. Going to fly into Sacramento on Friday. She's going to do some media today and tomorrow, and hopefully I'll get a chance to talk to her tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. We'll post it if there is an interview. Don't forget, we'll be back at 4:15, 1:15 Eastern tomorrow. We'll rehash all the trade deadline debuts. We'll have the Sweet 16 previews. They start on Saturday with everything going on. So what else got you in the trade deadline here, Charlie, before we take a break?
Well, you know, the Nuggets. I mean, holy cow. Let's get serious in Denver. Aaron Gordon. Wow. Let's make it happen. And then they pick up McGee on top of it. And you go, well, McGee's a little old. Well, yeah, but McGee's, this guy's got 3 rings. Okay. And that's exactly the kind of guy you want to have on your team when you're headed into the playoffs. I mean, he knows playoff basketball. That's exactly the kind of guy you want to have there. But I think getting Gordon is tremendous. I just had a chance to just briefly look at some of the in-depth stats. Not only good with the ball in scoring, but also tremendous on defense. And I know Michael Malone, and man, when you talk about a player who can play defense, you're talking about Michael Malone's kind of player. And so I think he's going to find a terrific home there. And man, so the Nuggets now, they become bigger players in the West than they were before, especially given the fact that you still have the Lakers kind of limping at this point, and they didn't do anything to really help themselves.
Vasu Vatapalli, Charlie O, Casey Freelove on assignment, the Make the Money and Run podcast powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. Let's take 30 seconds. Let's talk about the second half of the NBA post-trade deadline. Back in 30, this is the Make the Money and Run podcast for March 25th, 2021. As I get to it here, we'll be back in 30 seconds. Welcome back to the Make the Money and Run podcast. Vasu Vada Party Charlie O here. Casey on assignment today. We're powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. We had the trade deadline pass at noon Pacific time today. Lots of big trades. Aaron Gordon going to Denver. I don't know what to make of Aaron Gordon. We talked about that before the break, but Aaron Gordon going to Denver, he does a lot of things well, but I just don't know what he does great. He's going to be an added piece to the Nuggets, Charlie. He's from the Bay Area. I know his brother pretty well, and I know friends of his that know him. But I just don't know if Orlando maximized his talent. He was great at Oregon, and he's a great inside player, and he can dunk. He's improved his shooting quite a bit. They've got the MVP candidate and the Joker, Jokic there. They've got JaVale McGee, and I think that helps Jokic a lot because now they've got a backup center there for Denver, and they were hurt at the beginning of the year. They had a lot of injury at the beginning of the year. By the way, they traded Gary Harris back and RJ Hampton back to Orlando as well, too. They weren't getting much playing time. Gary Harris fell out of favor with Mike Malone. So as far as Aaron Gordon goes, that's a big trade for Denver. Hopefully he can get there to them. But to me, the winner today is Chicago Bulls. Nikola Vucevic going to the Bulls to help them on the East Coast side. Let's talk about the East a little bit as we get to it. We didn't get a chance to talk NBA yesterday, but let's talk about the Philadelphia 76ers and the Brooklyn Nets here as we get into it. Philadelphia 31-13. They've got the Lakers tonight. You can see the ticker on the bottom of the ticker. You can see the lines tonight. Philadelphia 5.5-point favorite at the Lakers tonight. Obviously, no LeBron James, no Anthony Davis. The total very low for an NBA game in 2021 at 215.5. You have to kind of wonder what that is. They won 3 in a row. They gave up 40 points in the third quarter to the Warriors, but ended up holding the Golden State Warriors to 13 points on Tuesday night. So defensively, they're there. There was some talk about Danny Green being moved, and I think that was predicated by the fact that Kyle Lowry was available on the trade block because they're all stars with Embiid and Simmons. Here's the thing about the Sixers, Charlie. In their last 10, they're 9-1. They're 14-3 over their last 17. But yet, going into tonight, they're 2 games up in the loss column on Brooklyn, who's been out of their mind with James Harden. Harden had 25 and 17 against Portland the other night in a comeback win. None of the big three played last night in Utah, and they got blown out. In fact, Casey and I were texting. It was a 38-point game in the third quarter. I don't know if you want to give up games when you're playing for that, but I understand why they did that. It was a back-to-back night, and James Harden in Utah, they might not have won the game anyway. They were a 9.5-point underdog for our purposes going into the game, and then when Harden was deemed ineligible to play or not playing, that he was going to be able to. The line moved up to 11. So, what does Philadelphia, if they can, what does Philadelphia need to do in terms of trying to hold off Brooklyn besides getting Embiid back? Brooklyn's red hot right now, and James Harden's thrown himself in the MVP race.
Well, I think one thing that they did do, I mean, they didn't make a big impact in the trade market today, but they quietly picked up George Hill. And George Hill is a sneaky good player. They had him here in Sacramento for just about a season. He came mid-season and they traded him at the trade deadline. He's been around a lot of places. He's been in Cleveland. I can't even name you all the places he's been.
Indiana, San Antonio. He was a starting guard. Yeah, no, he's only been to 3 places, and Oklahoma City was there, and Philadelphia. That's a good point. I've forgotten about him. I had him on my list here, but he was not anywhere to be found. But George Hill will be there. He'll be a good backup point guard for Simmons. He shoots free throws well. He's a great 3-point shooter. So that's somebody there. But but what are they going to do overall to hold off New Jersey or Brooklyn? Because Brooklyn is red hot right now, and now you're going to have Durant in about 2 weeks, and Kyrie Irving's not even on this road trip. So that's a throwaway game last night in Utah.
Yeah, Vasu, I think the only thing you can do to hold off Brooklyn is to get on your hands and knees and pray that they don't get healthy. I mean, I'm serious. I mean, you look at how that team is now configured. I mean, we all said, well, Brooklyn, how are they going to distribute the ball and how are those guys going to work together, with themselves on the court? Well, you know what? They figured that out pretty quick. I mean, seriously, James Harden, is he going to be a ball hog there? No, he's not. He's going to be a distributor. He will score, which they need him to score, but he's been pretty unselfish. So they figured out how they want to play the game together pretty quickly, and they're not overworking them right now going into the playoffs, and they're playing well. And I I'll tell you, if I'm Philly, if I'm Milwaukee, I'm very, very afraid. I'm very, very afraid. Just because, man, that team as configured, if they stay healthy, that's scary. And the other thing for Philly is, and I mean, and you don't like to say this about a team, but it's just the reality in the NBA today, and it's this way in a lot of sports because you have to pay your top stars so much money, and there's only so much talent you can amass. But Philly's fortunes really depend on Embiid's health. If he comes back as healthy and can play his game, that makes them a very tough competitor with Brooklyn and with Milwaukee. If he can't come back and be healthy, enjoy the playoffs, but don't think about the finals.
Let's talk about Milwaukee for a second, because this was the banner from yesterday. 29-14 now. They've won 8 in a row. They beat the Celtics last night. They had a big lead on the Celtics last night, but Boston was able to come back for the wagering purposes. They did not cover the 6.5 points or the 6 points, depending on what you got. They ended up having to hold off Boston, who was pretty much depleted right now. Now they've made a couple of trades, and now they've got Evan Fournier, by the way, a great shooter from Orlando. As we said, Orlando pretty much gutted their team today with their 3 best players, with Fournier and Vucevic and Gordon being traded by the trade deadline. So what's Milwaukee got to do? Are you surprised that Milwaukee didn't do anything? I know they traded for Holiday during the winter or before the season started, whatever that 71-day break we call it is. But here they are. Antetokounmpo, he's having a tough time shooting the ball still, although he had a great game last night. They're 9-1. They're 9-1 in their last 10 after the win last night versus Boston. They've won 8 in a row. And then Atlanta, Miami, and New York all have 22 wins to the 6th spot. Here's Charlotte, Boston, Chicago, and Indiana, 7-10 in the play-in tournament. By the way, let me tell you this: the 7-10, they came out with the format for the 7-10. So the 9-10 winner will play the loser of the 7 and 8 matchup in the play-in tournament. The winner of the 7 and 8 matchup will be the 7 seed, and the winner of the losers bracket will be the 8th seed, and then the other 2 teams will be eliminated. So that's how that works. That'll be May 18th to the 21st, and then the playoff format will start on May 22nd. So that's the play-in tournament that they tried last year, and it seemed to be very successful, so they thought they'd do that again. But right now, of the 4 teams, Charlotte, Boston, Chicago, and Indiana, you got to think Boston and Chicago are the winners out of that group right now.
Oh, absolutely. But Vasu, I got to tell you, again, I come back to Chicago after what they did today. I don't think Chicago's issue is playing. I mean, unless I miss my guess, I think Chicago's moving on up. I could see with what they did personnel-wise today, and I'm not doing this to placate you at all, because you know that because I love to just put a burr in your saddle every time I can with the Chicago team.
I'm not a Bulls fan, by the way. I'm not a Bulls fan, by the way. I do like the Bulls.
That's true. I know you're not, but it's a Chicago team, and I just love the
Chicago thing. Right.
But I don't expect the Bulls to be worried about. I mean, I can easily see the Bulls moving up into like a 6 seed spot after what they did today. If they can pull that team together quick, and pull that talent together quick, I don't think playing games are going to be an issue for them. I mean, that they really improved their personnel situation today. So I don't expect them to have play-in situations to be an issue. I think the Knicks will. Obviously Atlanta's going to. Boston, I don't know that Boston did that much to help themselves.
They traded Daniel Tice too today to Chicago. Mo Wagner was on the move twice from Washington to Chicago back to Boston. So I guess he's going to help them on the inside. They needed some shooting, and then they like Wagner shooting. And if you watch him in Michigan and you watch him play with the Wizards, he can run up and down. And I think that's the way Boston wants to do. All right, so let me ask you this then. So we both think Chicago did well. I think Boston did pretty good getting Evan Fournier, and Daniel Tice is a good bench player for them. I'm sorry, for Daniel Tice, with Mo Wagner coming in. Charlotte, they lost LaMelo Ball. That's gonna be tough to overcome. They don't play defense either. They're 7th. Atlanta, Miami, New York are all 4th, 5th, and 6th. They're all tied with 22 wins. If we think Chicago and Boston are going to move up, who are they going to replace? Atlanta traded Rajon Rondo today to the Clippers for Lou Williams, back in his hometown of Atlanta. Might be his last year anyway in terms of playing. The Miami Heat have lost 4 in a row. They've got their 2 guys, Oladipo. And who else did they trade for today? Who else did they get? Help me here, Charlie. I forgot.
Yeah. Somebody
Bielika. I said it right that time. There you
go. Yeah, I should know that. Nemanja Bjelica. Yes, I should know that.
Yeah, Bjelica and Oladipo, 2 shooters that Miami desperately needs, because they're solid on the inside with Bam. They've got Tyler Hero on the outside. They didn't want to include Tyler Hero in any package, and why would you if you watched him in the bubble last year? Absolutely not. Tyler Hero, great shooter. Dragic probably needs some help, and their forwards need some help too. So now you got Oladipo, as he can slide. He's a guard, and so they can slide one of their guards to a forward. So Miami may be on the rise there. So we're looking. So from the Eastern standpoint, everybody at 22 wins is 6 games back of Milwaukee. I don't think they're going to catch the 3rd spot. We're already at 42 games. Now Charlotte, Boston, Chicago, and Indiana are 7 to 10. I got a feeling Atlanta, Miami, or Atlanta and New York may slip into that 7 to 10 spot, and Miami, Boston, and Chicago will probably round out the top 6 in there, depending on how they do. Now, chemistry issues aside, we don't know how that's going to work, because you never know how these things work out going into it. And by the way, the betting lines you see at the bottom, make sure you check the betting lines, because Miami's still a 2-point favorite. We don't know if Oladipo is going to play tonight or Bjelica is going to play tonight. So you got to check that line, because Portland is playing pretty well right now. And they got blown out the other night. They lost to the Nets and got blown out by Dallas, but they've also got Norman Powell, who can easily make a trip to Florida, because Toronto's already playing in Florida, and he could easily be in that game tonight in Miami against the Trailblazers tonight. So that's one to look at as well too. Charlie, go ahead.
I don't think any of the guys that have been traded will play tonight, because everybody has 72 hours to report, and they have to clear their physicals. So I seriously doubt that anybody who's been moved today will play tonight. That would be a pretty go-y deal, and especially if they're on the road, because teams don't like to have physicals done on the road. It's just not a thing they like.
Well, it'll be interesting, because that's true. You do have time to report, but boy, then that tells everybody on our show, Make the Money and Run podcast, for the wagering side of it. Make sure you check and see who's playing. Those injury lists are important. Those trade lists are important. We'll have our picks later in the segment. Casey, I'm not sure if Casey's going to send any picks in, but I know Charlie and I have picks. All right, Asivada Party, Charlie O. Casey Freelove on assignment, the Make the Money and Run podcast, powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. Let's move to the Western Conference a little bit. We were going to talk about this yesterday, but we got all caught up with NCAA, and for good reason. So the Utah Jazz get a big win against a Harden-less, a Durant-less, and Irving-less Brooklyn Nets team. They blow them out. They're 31-11, 32-11 now. They've won 3 in a row. They're 5-5 in their last 10, maybe 6-4 in their last 10, as I didn't have a chance to update that. That 8.3-point differential probably went up a lot after last night's game with Brooklyn. I haven't done the calculations yet, but that's the best in the NBA, even better than Milwaukee, who's had legitimate blowouts. Utah Jazz in first. Phoenix lost to Orlando, struggling Orlando. After a big win against Miami, they lose to the Orlando Magic, who end up trading their 3 guys, like we said. They're 7-3 in their last 10 now after the loss last night. But they have the best road record in the NBA, Charlie. They're 14-6 now on the road. And any other team in the NBA, and even the top teams in the NBA, nobody has less than 8 losses on the road. So Phoenix Suns, you put them on the road. You get Chris Paul as a big-time leader, and you put them on the playoffs in the road. They're a problem for a lot of teams in the Western Conference right now. They are the best road record. They go into places, they beat them. I think they did that in the bubble last year as well, too. The Clippers and Lakers struggling at 3rd and 4th. Denver 8-2 in their last 10. They're in 4th place, and they've got Aaron Gordon and JaVale McGee added to a roster that's going to be pretty good. We thought they were going to be pretty good at the beginning of the year. And then in 7th to 10th, We've got San Antonio 22-18. They've got the Clippers tonight, back to back on that. Dallas, actually, that's not true. They got the Clippers 22-18. They're in 7th. Dallas 22-19. By the way, a trade Dallas just popped on my phone about 45 minutes ago. The New Orleans Pelicans have traded J.J. Redick to the Dallas Mavericks as well, and Nico Nelly, a big-time shooter, big-time three-point shooter from the Pelicans. Were the Mavericks looking for more offense? I thought they needed defense. I'm not sure what the thought was on that. If J.J. Redick's going to start for them or he's going to come off the bench. They've got Hardaway Jr. there. Of course, they got Luka. They got Porzingis. Dwight Powell's in the center. He's not really a big-time center from a defensive standpoint. He can block shots, but I don't know what their defensive capability is. And then Golden State, who had that loss against Philadelphia the other night, they're in 9th place. And then Memphis should be in 9th place because they have less losses. And Golden State would be in 10th place in the Western Conference. So what are we looking at from 7 to 10 here as we click back up to the top 6 here? Anybody from 7 to 10 going to threaten here? If Denver's in 6, that's going to be a tough nut to crack here to get in there. I mean, you're talking about the Lakers and the Clippers. If they get healthy, and now the Clippers have Rajon Rondo at the point guard. In fact, let's hit the Clippers. That's a question that I had. I was thinking about this myself. But they get Rajon Rondo. They trade Lou Williams. Patrick Beverley, not really a point guard on that team. Kawhi Leonard, Paul George handle the ball. Patrick Beverley, as I said, not really a point guard. Not even sure if he's a starting guard. But we remember him from the Houston Rockets and what kind of problem he was for the Golden State Warriors in those years. Of course, his reputation precedes himself for being a nap, for being a pass, and everything that he does. He's not a point guard and he doesn't shoot well. I think he shoots about 42%. His three-point percentage is about the same as his overall field goal percentage. So I think this is a good move for the Clippers to get Rajon Rondo because now it takes the ball out of Paul George's hands and Kawhi Leonard's hands, and they can move around and score, and they don't have to have the pressure to handle the ball like LeBron James does with the Lakers all the time, Charlie.
Well, I had the privilege of watching Rondo play for a season here in Sacramento. And the guy's amazing because he is the ultimate chameleon in this. And I mean that in the best sense of the form, because he will come into a game and be whatever he needs to be in the game. He'll come out and he'll feel the game. And if the game needs him to be a distributor, then that's what he'll do. He doesn't care whether he scores any points. If they need him to come out and be the assist guy that night, he'll come out and get double-digit assist and walk away and say, I had a great game. If he comes into a game and the guards aren't scoring and he senses he needs to dribble drive and go downhill and score points or maybe do some outside shooting, you know what he'll do? He'll wind up scoring in double digits. And then the next night he'll come out and go, oh, we need to distribute the ball tonight, and drop right back and become that distributor again. So he's really a guard without an ego in that sense. So he will be whatever the Clippers need him to be on a night-to-night basis. And he also, just because I think in part of where he is age-wise, he right now will be ready to put the pedal to the metal because he's not a guy at this point with his age. He's mid-30s. He's not going to play real hard that first half of the season. But he's ready to go. He knows now. He knows how to pace himself, and he'll be ready to make that drive to go to the playoffs and then make the playoffs. And he's experienced. There's nobody in the league that he's not going to know. And he can play some defense. I think it's a great pickup for a team that kind of needs help all the way around. And again, he's the kind of guy that can go out on the floor and be a floor general for you. And he's not impressed by anybody. He didn't care who you are. You know, Paul George, PG-13, I don't care. Kawhi, I don't care. I got the ball. I'll give you the ball when you're ready for the ball.
No doubt about it. So a good move by the Clippers. We talked about the Lakers right now, obviously it's hard to judge what the Lakers are going to do because they don't have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So 2 more weeks like that, but I'm just worried they may fall down out of the top 4 spot in terms of, because Denver's got it going right now. And if Denver, I was really surprised. I had Denver yesterday at -2, especially with all the with all the shenanigans going on with Toronto between Siakam and Nick Nurse, Denver just, I guess they were tired from Orlando because Toronto just took it to them, started out 17-6. They got up there, got it down to 6 at one point, but then it ended up being a blowout, 135-115, I think was the final score with the Toronto Raptors and the Denver Nuggets last night. So maybe it's a one-off for them. We'll see. But I'm fired up to see what Denver does. I'm not sure. The Lakers I'm not worried about because once you get LeBron James and Anthony Davis back, and then like I said, the Clippers, and people still don't talk about Utah. And here they are, the best point differential in the NBA.
Yeah.
But here they are. Here they are.
I want to jump back to Toronto for just a second, Vasil. I don't think that we can overplay the fact that Toronto is in Tampa. Okay. Those guys aren't at home when they're at home. They're in Tampa. So they're not in their environment that they want to be. And that's got to be old. I mean, I know that their families are there with them and everything else, but dealing with everything else that being in the NBA is right now, traveling and everything else. And folks, don't give me this, oh, they travel on their own plane and they got first class hotels and everything else. Traveling right now and being what it is, it's a pain. Okay. It's a pain. Plus on top of it, they can't be in their own homes. And I don't care who you are, what you are, when you're not in your own home, it's tough. And I feel, I think on top of everything else, that's a factor for the Raptors right now that's playing in as well. I some of the team tension I think can be related to that. It's got to. They're human beings. I think sometimes we lose the fact that these guys, they get upset stomachs, they get headaches, they get nervous, they get anxious. They can play ball like nobody's business, and we can only dream of doing that. But they're also regular folks too.
Regular folks that have bigger zeros in their bank account. That's the only difference. That's okay. We all know what we're getting into. No, I understand that. We understand that better than anybody because we know how to deal with them from the standpoint of media to players. All right, one other one I wanted to talk about. It's not really a major name. I don't remember where he went to college, but he was with New Orleans and then he went to Toronto. Matt Thomas is an unbelievable 3-point shooter with the Toronto Raptors, who the Utah Jazz got. I know they were in the Kyle Lowry market as well too, because they could use another shooter on that. Donovan Mitchell needs some help on that team from an offensive standpoint. They've got guys. They've got Bojanovic and they've got Joe Ingles, but Bojanovic can go in streaks. He's their second leading scorer, about 18 a game. Mitchell 24, 25 a game. And Rudy Gobert doesn't give you any offense, even though he's 7'6", but he's a great rim protector. Off the bench, they were a little lacking off the bench. Matt Thomas, the best team in the NBA right now, is going to be one heck of a pickup for the Utah Jazz. Mark my words on this. When you guys read about Matt Thomas in the playoffs, because the Utah Jazz will be in the playoffs, they will probably be the 1 or 2 seed, depending on how hot Phoenix is. That's going to be a great game when Utah and Phoenix play against each other the next time they do. So mark my words on this.
Cyclone.
Iowa Cyclone. Yeah, I knew Iowa State Cyclone, right. I remember seeing him in college, and I remember how good of a shooter he was, and I remember how good he was a couple of times in mop-up duty with Toronto. But Matt Thomas is going to be a guy that will shoot the lights out, given the opportunity. Quinn Snyder's a great coach. He knows how to manage his players. They're in first place for a lot of reasons, and one of them being that they have Quinn Snyder as a coach to manage the Donovan Mitchell, Rudy Gobert, Bojan Bogdanovic, and Joe Ingles and that group over there. Derek Favors also in the middle there as a backup center as well, too. They're a very well-balanced team. And what happened last year, I give Quinn Snyder a lot of credit between the feud that went on between Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert over the whole COVID thing. They've come back this year, and they've turned it on, and they've proven to be the best team because with Milwaukee, who can score at will sometimes, to be the point differential leader in the NBA over the Milwaukee Bucks, who've run it the last 3 years, basically, the Utah Jazz are somebody there. And I'm telling you right now, for everybody on Facebook Live and Stables Media YouTube page, we appreciate your comments, by the way, on everything. Feel free to chime in. We know we got Sweet 16 coming up on Saturday. Matt Thomas will be a name to watch for the Utah Jazz. He won't make a big impact, but it'll be impactful enough for the Utah Jazz when they need a big shot to hit. And Mitchell's being double teamed, and Bojanovic is having an off night, and Matt Thomas will come in and shoot some threes for them and take them to a few more victories that they may not have had. So that's my ode to Matt Thomas, Iowa State Cyclone. All right, last topic here as we get to. So now the trade deadline is passed. Now we've got potential free agents coming out. Now we got a lot of buyouts coming out, headed by Andre Drummond and LaMarcus Aldridge. LaMarcus Aldridge and the San Antonio Spurs have parted ways. Andre Drummond obviously going to probably be out of Cleveland within the 30 days. I guess it's 30 days for the buyouts is what they have to do. So they haven't officially released him. LaMarcus Aldridge, he's still a member of the Spurs, but they've released him. He's not even at the facility. What about Andre Drummond? I don't think the Lakers are a team that can use him. I don't think that there are teams that can use Andre Drummond for rebounding. I would say Utah would probably be a good spot for him. I would say, I don't think Denver could use him now. They've got JaVale McGee. But let's look at maybe the Clippers. The Clippers have a need for a center. I'm not sure how good Zubac is as a backup center. They've got Serge Ibaka as their starting center, and Zubac is their backup center. Andre Drummond would fit there. I mean, he's a double machine. I would think the Clippers would be interested in him right off the bat, Charlie.
Well, this is where your cap wizard comes into play, Vasu, because it all depends on what they're willing to sign for, because their buyout money and what they're willing to sign for is and what the team has available to sign them with all comes into play.
I hate to disagree. I don't want to interrupt. I don't like interrupting, but I think it has to do with the fact that the previous team owes the money to them. They come in for whatever salary that they can get. That'll be under the cap.
No, you're right. But it depends on what they're willing to come for, and so it gets all crazy, and whether they, now a lot of people will just come and play. I mean, one of the things is that I know LaMarcus, they're talking about a Miami destination for him. And I think he'll go. I think he'll go in a second to there, because I think they're looking for him. I think they're looking for him, like they're saying, 15, 20 minutes a night. Yeah. Because that would give everybody a rest, and they think that's what they think he's got a good 15, 20 minutes a night in him. And if that's what they're looking for, and a different, how many times have we seen guys go put on a new uniform, a different situation, and excel? And that might be what he needs. Drummond, I don't know. It's so many guys and so many situations, and who do you want to drop on your roster? Because you got to make a roster move in relationship to that. Again, here comes your cap money. Who becomes dead cap money? Who do you have that you can buy out? All of those things come into play when you have all of that, all of those situations. Do you have somebody with an expiring contract that you can buy out at that point? So there's a lot of factors that come into play. He's a desirable player, but do the competitive teams have that person they can eliminate to plug him in?
It's going to be interesting because LaMarcus Aldridge could also be a fit for the Clippers as well, too, because they traded the kid from Florida State to Minnesota, Kapagenle. I think it's how it's pronounced. He was a draft pick for Florida State a couple of years ago. That money comes off the books as well, too. So that money's available for either Andre Drummond or LaMarcus Aldridge. All right, so we've hit the trade deadline. We've hit everything going with this. Lassie Party, Casey Freelove on assignment. Charlie O's here with me as well, too, to Make the Money and Run podcast. Let's switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about the NCAA for a couple of minutes here. Just anything new on these are the updated lines. Baylor 7, 140.5 versus Villanova. Arkansas 11.5, 159 versus Oral Roberts. Anything in your mind from the standpoint of we've had a day to look at it, we've got the point spreads. Just real quick, Charlie, on the Baylor Villanova game, from the standpoint of laying the 7 to Villanova.
No.
What about Arkansas?
You know what? I have to tell you, and I'm kind of a Musselman fan, okay, just because I want him. I've always wanted to see him do well because I kind of felt like he got done wrong here in Sacramento when he was here for a short stint with the Kings and also in Golden State. And I like what he did when he ran up to Reno and put that program together.
Maybe he's just a better college coach. Maybe he's just a better college coach. Maybe he's just a better college coach.
That may be. A friend of my grandson's played for him for 2 seasons up in Reno, and really loved him. Really loved him.
Yeah.
And so, but they're a little bipolar as a team, which may be reflective of the coach. I'm not sure.
He might be bipolar. Who knows? The way some of his motivational tactics, he might be as well too. All right, let's move on to the Midwest here. Loyola Chicago, Oregon State. That's probably the greatest story of the game with Wayne Tinkle, the Oregon State coach, and his dad being a student there and him playing basketball in that gym and everything like that. And Sister Jean, and we've heard that story for 2 years. By the way, did you hear I don't know if we mentioned it yesterday. She had the scouting report for Illinois down. 50% of the layups, 30% of their three-pointers, and she knows her basketball. From what I understand, she's from San Francisco. From what I understand, she played basketball growing up, and so she knows a little bit about the game. And obviously, being the team chaplain, you have to like basketball to volunteer to be the team chaplain to travel with them. And God bless her being 101 years old. Maybe they get another win here versus Oregon State. I think defensively they probably will stand out with Oregon State. But boy, these point spread lines are tough, and they don't make them easy, obviously, for everybody to win. And then you've got Houston. Houston's a very good offensive rebounding team. They're a great rebounding team. Syracuse has trouble rebounding. If they don't hit their shots, this game could be over early, Charlie.
Yeah, but I got to tell you, Vasu, Syracuse is scaring me to death because
they get the tournament. I know.
I'll tell you, man, every team that's played them so far in the tournament, they get out there and they see that zone and they're looking like it's the first time they've ever seen a zone in the entire time they've played basketball. I look at it and I'm going, this is the same zone that Syracuse has been playing since 1976.
Yeah,
how can someone not break that zone? But I got to tell you, hats off to them because
they're long. I mean, they get guys that are 6'4", 6'5", and they're long, and they attack you right when you cross. That zone attacks you right when you get across half court. I mean, I know. I mean, I'm not trying to play analyst here, Billy Packer here, but that's clearly what they do, and it's been the same zone for years and years and years. If you can't make the corner passes and make the diagonal passes, not many teams, because of their length, can make diagonal passes or cross-court passes against them because of that length, and that keeps them all bunched up. And I think that's what hurt San Diego State, because San Diego State, they couldn't get any spread on the floor. They were just bunched up.
I mean, they could, it was amazing. I mean, I'm serious. I know I throw a lot of off the cuff stuff, but seriously, it looked to me like San Diego State was seeing a zone for the first time in their lives. I mean, they couldn't, it was like they couldn't break it. They couldn't get any spacing. It was amazing to me. And again, a team that I hate. A coach that I don't like. And they played amazing defense in that game. Hats off.
Lots of people have thought that there might be 7 or 8 guys on that Syracuse zone defense. So it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see what happens in that. All right, let's move on to the next region here real quick. Michigan, no Isaiah Livers. Not sure if he's going to be back. Florida State, also a long, mean defensive team. They can rebound, but they've got shooters on this team, and they can run with you. And I know Michigan likes to run. Juwan Howard likes to play the up and down ball, but they don't have the guys. They don't have Isaiah Livers. Mike Smith's done a great job as a grad transfer, and then of course Hunter Dickinson in the middle there, that big center at 18 years old. Freshman center there, having a great old time, just dominated on the inside. He dominated the Big Ten, and remember the Big Ten had 9 teams in the tournament every once. So you just got to figure that Michigan, a 2.5-point favorite. A lot of respect to Florida State right there. I don't know if that's due to Livers or if it's due to the fact that Florida State has played well, because they've had some games. They did not look very good against Georgia Tech in the ACC, and then there were spurts against Greensboro last weekend where they let up. And so I just think you can't let up on Michigan And if they have any let up at all, this could be Michigan's game. Then you look at Alabama. Defensively, they've come out and played, but boy, this Mick Cronin team, for some reason, he's got them going the last 5 weeks. They started off hot, got into a tough spell there towards the end of the conference season. I watch the Pac-12 every week, so I know they've struggled. There was even talk that they might not even make the tournament at some point, and here they are. They're in the Sweet 16 playing up against potentially what could have been a number 1 seed, but they're a 2 seed in Alabama, 6.5 points, and that line's gone up from 6, and the total's at 145.5. I don't know how this total is going to get to 145.5. Honestly, Charlie, the way both teams play defense, I know Alabama can score, and I know they put a lot of points up on Maryland. I don't think UCLA shoots well enough to get to. I mean, if they get hot like they did against Abilene Christian, then they can do it. But even then, they only had 62 points or 61 points at that point. So I just got to think that this total might be a little high for UCLA Alabama.
Yeah, and good heavens, we're talking about a Pac-12 team playing defense.
Right.
UCLA playing defense. I mean,
we'll get to USC in a second with that. Yeah.
And they're playing. That's going to be a good game. It's going to be a really good game. I'll tell you, Vasu, after the experience that we all had trying to handicap those games last week, I'm telling you, I'm not looking forward to trying to do predictions on this on these games. I'm really not.
Any good therapists out there? Any good therapists out there for our weekend?
Yeah, really, Bueller. I mean, we need help. We need help.
All right, let's move on to the West here real quick before we get to our picks here. Gonzaga, we talked about Gonzaga a lot. They're a machine right now. I mean, you take Suggs out of the game, then you got Kispert. You take Kispert out, you got Nembhard. You take Nembhard out, you got Timmy in the middle. They got shooters up and down. If you can't shoot with them, you're in trouble because they can run and their high percentage shooting is really good. And I know Creighton likes to run and Creighton likes to move the ball up and down. You just can't. You just can't. You gotta defend on them because if you think you're going to get in a game in the 60s with them, forget it.
Yeah, and let me go on record that I have reversed my course. I am flip-flopping. I'm on record that, yes, this is a flip-flop. Yes, a mid-major can win the NCAA tournament this season. It just won't be Creighton.
USC, Oregon, of course, the other game. All right, let's get to picks here before we run out on the hour here. I'm going to go first here. Vasu has the New York Knicks. After what they did to Washington, they're going to go back-to-back against Washington. They're going to lay the 3 to the Wizards tonight. That's going to be a cover for the Knicks. Sacramento on the heels of a trade. They're 2.5-point favorite against Golden State at home. Golden State, no Curry. The way they played in the fourth quarter against Philadelphia, I think Sacramento covers that game. And again, I looked at this total, 215.5. It's hard to see in the NBA these days, but I'm taking the Philly Lakers under 215.5. College basketball, the NIT tonight, Boise State plus 4.5, Memphis, Colorado State plus 1.5, and Western Kentucky -1 against Louisiana Tech. Go, Charlie.
You know what? I'm only going one game on this, and I'm going to take the Knicks -1.5 first half over the fine Wizards.
Nice job. All right. Well, that's an hour of NBA trade deadline talk. NCAA. We'll be back tomorrow, 4:15 Eastern, 1:15 Pacific. We'll preview the Sweet 16. We'll get in the minutia of it. We'll talk more NBA trade deadline. I'm sure Casey has some thoughts on that as well too. Going to be very interesting for the second half of the season. By the way, 1 week from today, 7 days, opening day for baseball. So stay tuned. We'll have a baseball preview show next Wednesday at some point. We'll give you the times and dates for that as well too. So for Casey Freelove on assignment, he's Charlie O. This is the Make the Money and Run podcast powered by Stables Media, sponsored by Viget. I'm Vasu Vadaparty. Have a great afternoon, and as always, good luck with your games. Take care, everybody.